History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and today the United States faces echoes of the British Empire's final fatal mistakes. As America's campaign to assert control over Greenland shakes global alliances, we must ask, is this bold strategy or imperial overreach? By tracing Britain's miscalculations and comparing them to America's current path, we'll reveal the dangers of unchecked ambition and the urgent lessons history offers. The question is clear: can America learn from the past, or is it doomed to repeat it? The British Empire's rise was fueled by ambition, naval power, and a belief in its own permanence. Its patchwork of colonies, ruled through manipulation and force, masked deep instability and resentment. The empire's arrogance blinded it to the growing strength of nationalist movements and the limits of its own reach. As the empire expanded, it became too vast and rigid to adapt, sowing the seeds of its own decline. Britain's greatest vulnerability was not its enemies, but its refusal to recognize the costs of its own success. Britain's decline was a slow unraveling, a gradual process that spanned decades and was marked by significant events and shifts in global power dynamics. This decline was marked by overreach and a stubborn refusal to adapt to the changing world. The British Empire, once the largest and most powerful in history, began to show signs of strain. After World War I, weakened and exhausted, Britain still clung to new territories, stretching itself thin. The war had drained its resources and morale, yet the empire continued to expand, driven by a desire to maintain its global dominance. Local resistance from Gandhi's India to Ireland exposed the limits of imperial power. These movements were not just about independence. They were about challenging the very notion of colonial rule and asserting the right to self-determination. But London's concessions came too late. The tide of history was turning, and the British Empire was on the wrong side of it. The promises of reform and autonomy were insufficient to quell the growing demand for complete independence. World War II delivered the final blow. Britain emerged victorious but bankrupt, dependent on the US, and unable to sustain its empire. The war had devastated the British economy, and the cost of maintaining the empire became untenable. The Suez Crisis of 1956 revealed Britain's diminished status as it failed to act without American support. This event was a stark reminder that Britain was no longer a superpower and had to navigate a new geopolitical landscape. The real mistake wasn't losing the empire, but failing to accept a new world order and its own reduced role. Britain struggled to redefine its identity and place in the world, clinging to past glories instead of embracing new realities. Britain's legacy is a warning. Clinging to past glory leads only to costly blunders. The story of Britain's imperial overreach serves as a lesson in the importance of adaptation and the dangers of hubris. In 2025, America's push to acquire Greenland became a defining test of its global leadership. Framed as strategic necessity, the move alienated Denmark and NATO allies, who saw it as a violation of sovereignty. Washington's pressure ignored Greenland's own people, fueling nationalist protests and calls for independence. This underestimation of local will mirrors Britain's imperial mistakes, assuming power can override self-determination. America's Greenland gambit is not a sign of strength, but a relic of outdated imperial thinking. The real test: will the US double down on coercion or learn that true influence is earned through respect and partnership? America's recent push to acquire Greenland has sent shockwaves through the NATO alliance, raising questions about the true intentions behind US foreign policy. What was once seen as a united front among Western allies now appears increasingly fragile as American ambition stirs unease among its closest partners. The move has eroded trust, with European leaders openly debating whether they can continue to rely on the United States as a steady partner. In response, there's a growing movement within Europe to pursue greater strategic independence, with calls for a more self-reliant defense policy echoing through the halls of the European Parliament. The spectacle of a US ally being pressured over its own territory has galvanized public opinion across the continent. Protests have erupted in major cities, and politicians are now under pressure to defend European interests more assertively, even if it means challenging American priorities. Meanwhile, Russia and China have seized on the controversy, using it as a propaganda tool to highlight what they describe as American overreach and disregard for international norms. Around the world, anti-American sentiment is on the rise. International headlines question the motives behind US actions, and some world leaders are now openly discussing alliances and partnerships that exclude the United States, further isolating Washington on the global stage. At home, the Greenland episode has deepened existing political divisions. Supporters argue it's a bold move for national security, while critics see it as reckless and damaging to America's reputation. The debate has spilled into the streets and onto the airwaves, fueling partisan tensions. Many diplomats and military leaders have voiced serious concerns, warning that such aggressive tactics could backfire, undermining decades of careful alliance building and risking America's long-term strategic interests. Like Britain in its imperial heyday, America now finds itself facing mounting opposition, both abroad and within its own borders. The echoes of history are unmistakable as the costs of unchecked ambition become increasingly apparent. The fallout is clear. Imperial ambition not only risks vital alliances and global credibility, but also threatens to fracture domestic unity, leaving America at a crossroads in its role as a world leader. Empires are expensive. Britain learned this as the costs of control outpaced the benefits, especially after 2 world wars. Today, America's vast military footprint and rising debt echo Britain's unsustainable burdens. The Greenland campaign would only add to these strains, demanding resources as domestic needs go unmet. Alienating allies could bring economic retaliation, just as Britain's decline coincided with the rise of new powers. Fixation on grand strategies distracts from urgent domestic investment and innovation. The real price of overreach isn't just foreign entanglements, it's the lost opportunities at home. America must weigh the true cost of imperial ambition. No empire survives against the will of the people, at home or abroad. In Britain, media and public opinion turned against imperial adventures as costs mounted and realities were exposed. Today, real-time social media broadcasts Greenlandic protests worldwide, challenging official narratives instantly. The American public is divided, with many questioning the wisdom of antagonizing allies for imperial gain. Modern media scrutiny makes it nearly impossible to sustain unpopular foreign policies. Every misstep is instantly visible, fueling debate and resistance. Ignoring public sentiment is a perilous strategy that can erode power from within. Hindsight makes imperial mistakes seem obvious, but leaders are often trapped by their own myths and rigidity. Britain's fatal flaw was its refusal to adapt and listen to local aspirations, a lesson America risks repeating in Greenland. Experts warn that US coercion echoes British logic, threatening alliances and underestimating the power of public will. Greenlandic leaders now harness global media, just as American revolutionaries once used print to rally support. The consensus: Washington misjudges the emotional force of nationalism and the limits of its own power. True strength lies in humility, partnership, and respect for self-determination, not in dictating terms. In 2026, America stands at a crossroads. Repeat Britain's path of overreach, or choose adaptation and cooperation. The decisions made today will echo through the generations to come, shaping the future of not just the nation, but the world. Will America embrace a future of collaboration where diverse voices come together to solve global challenges? Or will it retreat into isolation, risking the same fate as empires of the past? The Greenland Gambit is a warning sign. Unilateral action risks decline, while partnership offers a sustainable future. The world is interconnected, and no nation can thrive in isolation. Cooperation and mutual respect are the cornerstones of a prosperous future. By working together, nations can address climate change, economic inequality, and other pressing issues. This choice isn't just for leaders, but for every citizen, reflecting on America's founding ideals. Each individual has a role to play in shaping the nation's path. The principles of democracy, freedom, and justice are not just historical artifacts. They are living ideals that require constant nurturing and vigilance. Open debate and honest reflection are signs of democratic strength, not weakness. History is a guide, not a prophecy. Britain's mistakes offer urgent lessons, not inevitable doom. The decline of the British Empire serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of overreach and isolation, but it also provides valuable lessons on the importance of adaptation and cooperation. America has the chance to choose a different course, learning from the past rather than reliving it. The world is watching, and the next chapter is yet to be written. The decisions made today will determine the legacy we leave for future generations. Will it be one of division and decline, or unity and progress? The final chapter has yet to be written, and it is up to us to decide how the story unfolds.